Does globalization help or hinder the poorest people in countries with the lowest incomes? Globalization is the increasing interconnectedness of people and communities around the world. Whilst it can be argued that even since pre-Roman times humans have had some level of global connection, coming into the 21st century the world is becoming increasingly more interconnected though, information, trade migration, and a whole host of other factors. For the most part, especially in the more developed countries with higher standards of living, happiness, etc., globalization is seen as a predominantly good thing that brings overall benefit. After all, it means more things, more money, and all cheaper, not to mention access to information and opportunities for travel and such like. However, not everyone sees this side of globalization as the world standard, and this essay looks to evaluate the view that in fact globalization harms those poorest people in the lower income countries of the world, and will do so by examining dependency theory, Botswana, and Kenya. Although falling in a decline of popularity, dependency theories raise an important point when it comes to globalization. This theory depicts Marxist ideas of that the rich countries are in a center circle, and poorer countries surrounded this circle in a wider periphery, and then even poorer countries fin in an even wider periphery, where with every wider circle the countries seek to serve the interests and/or demands or those richer than them. Although the world may not be so cut and dry with many poorer countries investing in those richer, like Chinese development in the U.S., on the whole this theory fits with the general trend of the richer countries exploiting those with lower incomes, which ultimately harms those poorer civilians in those countries. An example of this can come from the many MNCs that have set up factories in the lower income world to save on costs and exploit the cheap labor and lack of regulation to make far more money for those at home. Global megacorporations like Nike, Samsung, and Apple have set up factories in these countries, especially around Southeast Asia like Vietnam and Indonesia. Whilst a counterpoint can be made that these sweatshops are providing more money and opportunity for those poorer people in these countries, ultimately it still harms them as, to take Indonesia for example, around the fifth largest producer of clothing garments, these factories demand long hours of difficult labor and dangerous conditions with far less safety and health regulations than in the richer world. Not only this, but factories, especially clothing, produce a massive amount of pollutants, largely toxic, which is more often than not dumped into local waterways. This massive amount of pollution has, and will continue to harm those who live in the area, who use the water, drink the air, but are still untimely dependent on these factories due to their economic hardship. We can see here that this provides a clear picture of where globalization is exploited and ultimately harms those poorer people in lower income countries. However, this is not the case everywhere in the world. A large part of this amount of unfair exploitation comes from government limitation. When a government can use globalization for their advantage, we can see a clear case in which globalization helps rather than hinders the poorest people in the lowest income countries. The clearest example of this comes from Botswana, a once incredibly low-income nation in southern Africa has, in the last decade or so, transformed into one of the richest in the continent and a middle-income country globally. This was done primarily through globalization. Although Botswana only has a small population and limited agricultural land, they are blessed with one of the largest diamond reserves in the world. Using this competitive advantage in the rapidly globalizing economy, Botswana used its attractive economy, democratic, transparent, low-corruption economy, to attract foreign direct investment, FDI, from around the world, although primarily richer countries, to extract and sell the diamonds. Where in some places like this could lead to effectively neocolonialism, Botswana ensured that the government always had a large stake in the diamond activities. This partially nationalized the industry, granting the government millions more in spending than they would otherwise get from taxing their small, poor population. The government then used this extra income to invest in development across the countries, in schools, healthcare, and finance to raise its population largely out of absolute poverty. This example effectively demonstrates a case whereby, if done correctly, globalization can help rather than hinder the poorer people in a LEC. So therefore, it seems that in evaluating the statement, globalization can go either way to help or hinder a poorer country. This concept of either way can be seen in another poorer African country, Kenya. Kenya is significantly larger than Botswana in terms of population, but still poorer per person. Kenya has the potential to also become a rich country like Botswana. It has many natural resources and a large labor pool. However, it has not allowed globalization to take such a controlling foothold of the economy. Globalization has both helped and hindered Kenya. The crop industry, largely wheat of which is targeted to be exported to Europe, has come under immense stress as the EU subsidies its own farmers in order to maintain a presence in the global market and not be undercut by competitors like the US and Russia. This has harmed Kenyan farmers as their livelihoods have been cut for being less competitive, relying on a globalized trade industry for income, which has harmed farmers as they stayed poorer due to less income, which has led to a worse life with a lower life dependence, happiness, etc. However, another sector of the economy, flowers, has flourished. This is because the farmers have found their niche, and due to less bureaucracy in finding export partners, Kenya has been able to support those poorer people through increased revenue in the global flower market, granting more income for people, which brings more opportunities and overall reduces harm to these poorer communities. And this on and off benefit of globalization happens across Kenya in different industry, and furthermore can be seen across the world, from lithium mines to AIDS. It seems, therefore, in an evaluation of the statement that globalization can harm the poorest people in the lowest income countries, but can also benefit them, and therefore one cannot fully justify giving evidence to support or deny the statement. Thanks for watching. Please subscribe.